I'm recording this on the 13th of May at about 10:30 at night, and at this time of year, throughout May, June and July really, you need to be out about 10:30 before it gets even dark enough to see the brighter stars. And as you can see, there's a certain amount of light in the western sky, or rather the northwestern sky, where the sun set about an hour and a quarter ago. And this is the last gasp of Venus. It's been with us for the whole of the spring, in fact going back into December into the evening sky, but from now on it's more or less disappearing from the sky. As you can see, it's really quite low. It was higher up earlier in the evening, but by the end of May it will be completely gone from our sky, and on June the 3rd actually it goes almost in front of the sun, not quite, just about a quarter of a degree above the sun, and so that will be gone from our sky until the end of next year, and it won't be anything like as easily visible next year either. So that's Venus, and at the moment it's visible as a very thin crescent, and you can actually see it with binoculars, best seen when the sky is a bit brighter than it is now, and so that it doesn't glare. It just is a really bright point of light now, but look for it when the sun has just gone down, and should see the crescent even with ordinary 8 or 10 power binoculars. So let's have a look at the other things in the sky, which would of course be there even when Venus has gone at this time of year throughout May and June. Above Venus and slightly to the right there is the bright star Capella. It's in the constellation of Auriga, which is really a winter constellation. It's due, well, more or less overhead in the middle of winter, but now it's setting down into the northern sky, although Capella itself is visible even in midsummer, way down in the just above the northern horizon, and you'll be able to see that as a bright star even in the evening twilight at midsummer. So that's the constellation of Auriga. But let me move around a bit now and looking at the over to the left there. You can see these two stars, very obvious, two pair of stars. Those are the heavenly twins, Castor and Pollux, Gemini. Castor is the one on the right, and Pollux is the one on the left at this time of year. So those are that's the constellation of Gemini, and the stars of Gemini hang down from there. You can see a few of them in the view here. Now let's move around to another star and to another constellation, which is very much a view of the spring sky, and it's starting to set now over into the west, and this is the constellation of Leo. You see the bright star there, Regulus, the brightest star in Leo, and you can very much see the pattern of Leo, the constellation of the lion. If I use the laser pointer, you will see there is Regulus, and this pattern here is the head of the lion, its mane there, and this is the body of the lion here, and over there is the nebula, which is the tail of the lion. So there's the crouching lion. This pattern is also known as the sickle for obvious reasons. It's a sort of backwards question mark, and that's very much a sign of the spring sky, but now it's starting to set. Now if I pan round a bit further, we can come to another constellation of the spring, but really this time of year this is the constellation of Virgo, and it's more or less below the nebula there, the tail of the lion, and you can see this bright star here just behind the tree there, which is the brightest star in Virgo, which is the star Spica. And the constellation of Virgo is sort of italic Y shape. You can see there's a bowl there, and there is the stem of the Y. So that's the main stars of Virgo. Now in this area here, if you look on the star map, you will see literally hundreds of galaxies, and probably actually thousands of them. And the strange thing is that you might look with binoculars and expect to see them, but you won't see a single one unless you are very, very perceptive and careful about where you look, because although there are thousands of galaxies there, they're actually very faint and very small as seen through binoculars, and indeed even through a telescope. Although they look very plentiful on a map, they're much more difficult to see when you actually look with a binoculars or a telescope, you really need to pick them out, because they are indeed very distant and very small. Although it's one of the largest clusters of galaxies that we know about, we are in a way on the fringes of the Virgo cluster of galaxies. Our own galaxy, the Milky Way, is just a minor part on the outskirts of the Virgo cluster. And there are other galaxies in the sky which are much more easy to see, but the Virgo cluster is the chief one at this time of year. Now I've switched lenses on the camera. This is a 200mm lens, which gives about twice the field of view of binoculars, but I wanted to show you how to find the galaxies in the Virgo cluster. Now here's the star Denebula. It's enlarged compared with the one I showed you earlier on of Leo, the tail end of Leo. And if you move a little bit to the left of Denebula, you come to about a 5th magnitude star, which is called 6 Comey. You don't need to worry about the name, but it follows the nebula through the sky. And then if you move down a bit, you'll find a pair of stars which are down at the bottom left of the view there, which are, the brighter one is called Rho Virginis, and this is the area where all the galaxies are to be found. So there's 6 Comey, that's the satellite going through, and there's Rho Virginis. Now in between the two, just where that satellite's going there, there's another one following it through the sky. Not Starlinks, I don't think. You'll see look at those. Anyway, let's get back to where I was. So you'll see in between the two, you'll see a little triangle of stars, and these are fairly easy to find with binoculars, and that's your guide to one of the brightest galaxies in the Virgo cluster, which is M87. Now I'm going to increase the sensitivity of the camera a bit so you can see that triangle much more clearly, and just to the left of that there is another star, and just below that is the galaxy M87. Don't know if you can pick it out on the video, but with binoculars you'll see it more clearly. And now with the 400mm lens you can just see the galaxy M87, and just above maybe the galaxies M84 and M86. So now I've moved position a bit, and you can see Virgo right in the middle of the field of view, again looking southwards. And one thing I want to show you is just looking below and to the right of Virgo is a little pattern of stars called the constellation of Corvus, the Crow. And it goes to show that you can find a pattern of stars. There it is, 1, 2, 3, 4, those stars there. You can find patterns of stars. They don't have to be very bright, but you can actually pick them out very easily. That's a quadrilateral of stars which is below Virgo and is really distinctive at this time of year. And now I'm going to move to the left further again, and also higher up, and we come to another really bright star, Arcturus. And you can always tell it because it's got a slightly golden colour to it, and you can see this very clearly at this time of year. It's in the constellation of Bootes, B-O-O-T-E-S. A lot of people pronounce it Boots, but it's Bootes. The second O has got an umlaut over it, shows that it has to be pronounced separately. Now, going back to Arcturus, and if you look to the left of Arcturus, let's get the laser pointer going. Going back to Arcturus, if you move to the left of Arcturus, you'll see a very obvious semicircle of stars. Here we go. This is northern crown, Corona Borealis. There are lots of coronas in the sky, and this is the stellar one, or there's also a Corona Australis, which is the southern crown. The word corona meaning crown, and you get the corona around the sun. And of course I mention it because we've got the coronavirus at the moment, but of course the ones in the sky were there a lot longer before. The word meaning crown gets used for a lot of things. And also, if I move a bit further along from Corona, we will find the constellation of Hercules, and this is most known for this pattern here called the keystone, and that is very obvious. And if the rest of Hercules extends down like that, so the keystone, and there's Hercules. So two very recognizable but fairly faint constellations, not the brightest. If you're in a city sky, you might have trouble finding them. Arcturus one side, Vega down the other, and between the two we have Hercules and Corona Borealis. Now I'm showing you an enlarged view of the keystone of Hercules. Actually, I can't get it all in, but there are the two stars on the bottom of the keystone on the right hand side. If I pan up, you can see there's one of the stars, and there's the bottom star. That's just the keystone of Hercules. Now, if we take the top two stars, so there's one side of the keystone there, and there's the other star, and between the two, just there, we've got the cluster M13 in Hercules, the globular cluster. A beautiful sight in a telescope, less impressive binoculars. This shows you more or less as you would see it through binoculars. And now with a 400mm lens, which is pretty well approximate to binocular field of view, you can see the globular cluster M13 in Hercules looking decidedly fuzzy, and in a good sky and with a pair of binoculars you should be able to see that quite clearly. It looks much better in the telescope, of course, but that's one of the sights of the late spring, early summer sky.